If you would like to open your scriptures to Genesis 18, you can follow along. We'll be in that area for quite a while this evening. In Genesis 18, God comes and speaks with Abraham. Messenger of the Lord that receives worship comes and speaks with Abraham and discusses with him that he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham asks a question that I think is kind of normal, that I think that we might ask, and I think that people of the world may present it to us. And the way that I brought this up not too long ago, the people of the world would ask the question, how could an all good and an all powerful God allow bad things to happen, especially to good people? And Abraham asks a similar question in this circumstance. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? I think that Abraham makes an assumption that we might make in certain situations. How many people are righteous in Knoxville? It's a really beloved city here. Some of you, and I won't get it too much into the more local politics, how many righteous are in Everett's? And those of you who had the differentiated high schools would probably point at different portions. How many righteous are in the area? Abraham starts out, and all of the wording that he uses is so humble to approach God. And he starts with, if there are 50 righteous people, and he starts reducing that number because God agrees. If there are 50, that's fine. I won't. He gets all the way down to 10. If there are 10 righteous people, God agrees. If there are 10 righteous people in the city, He won't destroy it. And then God, in an abrupt way in our scriptures, ends the conversation and they depart. I wonder Abraham's mindset. How would yours be? If there are 10 righteous people in Knoxville, God won't destroy it. What do you think the chances are? What do you think the odds are? They got a fair shot? Just 10. That's like one big family or two, well, still big families. Just 10 people. In the next chapter, God sends 2 angels to bear witness. It's on the pronouncement of 2 or 3 witnesses will every word be established. And God sends 2 angels, 2 messengers. They're called men throughout most of the story here. He sends 2 messengers to verify what's going on over there in Sodom. Lot knows what kind of men there are in the city. And he's trying to prevent something bad from happening to them. He invites them in, shows them hospitality. And your scriptures tell you that all the men of the city demand that the men be brought out to them. Their intentions are negative toward these 2 individuals. Lot knows exactly what they're going to do to them. If there are 10 righteous, yet all the men of the city decide that the best course of action to take is to homosexually rape these 2 men. And whenever Lot will not deliver them, they say, well, then Lot is going to be the one who receives that kind of abuse. In verses 10 and 11, the men pull Lot back inside the house, and they strike the men with some form of blindness to where they are groping for the door. Even in their deluded state of whatever this is, this type of blindness is, they cannot find the door that they were just right there at. That's the depravity. Not 10 righteous. I wonder, not because I want to, how many men had received this in the city? Lot did not go, oh, you know what, there's a chance that there's some crime in the neighborhood. I've seen it on the news. This is commonplace enough that the outcry against Sodom has gone up to the ears of the Lord. This has happened to enough people that Lot recognizes it's not safe for you to be in the square where they intended to sleep, that you need to be under the protection of a roof, of a home. Abraham barters down to 10. If there are 10 righteous people in the city, why is Lot there in the first place? There are places, and this is the first of three, and I'll try to remember to point out the other two. These first of 3 points that I want to draw from this lesson, especially for those of you who are younger and still making decisions and don't have your routine so perfectly set in life. Number one, there are some places where it's not inherently sinful for you to be, that a Christian just don't belong. There are situations and locations where you can be, and it's not inherently sinful. It's not a strip club. You would say there's nothing good that can happen there, unless they're closed and you can have a Bible study or a barn burning. There's nothing good that would happen there. But it's not inherently sinful for you to be in some locations. That doesn't mean that we belong there. Whether by teleport or by escort, Lot's family, 4 of them, are removed from the city. There's a typo in your bulletin. Just take a moment to point it out here. It's not 1 Corinthians 19, it's Genesis 19. I apologize. But whether they are teleported outside the city or whether the angels escort them through the blind people, doesn't matter. The men who are sent by God escort 4 people out of the city. Lot, his wife, and 2 virgin daughters. Whenever Lot is told, you need to get your family and get them out of here, there's a word that's used here. That's the reason I asked you to change the invitation song. Lot lingered. But Lot lingered. He knew what kind of area he was in. He knew what the people of the city were trying to do, just tried to do to him. And whenever the angels say, look, judgment is going to happen here, this is not the place you want to be. It is drawing the wrath of God. Lot doesn't say, I need to go. He says, well, and hems and haws and whatever type of delay he puts, to the point where the angels, by some kind of force, draw him out of the city. His wife and 2 of his virgin daughters. I couldn't help but put the meme up because it just seems so appropriate that this is quite literally, in this circumstance, what happens. The angels say, come on, dummy, we got to go, and pull him out of the city so that it can be destroyed. They seize them and snatch them up. And it's said that this is done by mercy, the Lord being merciful to him. Why linger when we know something is wrong? Point number 2. When we know something is wrong, we convince ourselves that we can handle it. We convince ourselves that we will be stronger. We convince ourselves that we have squashed this temptation, that it is no longer the temptation that it used to be, that this is a sin that we have put aside, and it's not something that we have to pay as much attention to anymore. Well, that's exactly when Satan goes, good, let me poke at you about it a little bit. It is wonderful. It is truly wonderful to beat a temptation. And every time, we should be commended for that. We should encourage and edify whenever you beat a temptation, whenever there's something that you've put down that you should have never picked up in the first place. That is something to be commended for. But there's a reason why they say that people who abuse drugs or people who are addicted to gambling, that they're in recovery their entire lives. And it's because it's going to be a draw for you your entire life. It may not be as strong as it once was. Not on day 1 of your recovery or not on day 2. But there are so many people that have it beat for years maybe, that just can't keep it away for forever. Take heed to your pride. Sin is a pollution that stains everything around it. The entire city, it's Sodom, it's Gomorrah that are the problem. It's these locations where men are not safe to sleep outside because they will be abused. But sin is a pollution to the righteous. If there are 10 righteous people, okay, when you get to the home, when the angels come to the home, they find that there's righteous Lot, who in the New Testament is called righteous. His wife, his 2 virgin daughters that are taken outside the city. Also in his home at that time, there are 2 son-in-laws who apparently are married to different daughters because these are still virgins and these are married, and that's not how that works. They think he's joking. The other daughters are not found and brought out. There are at most 4. From what we know to this point and what we've read. It's not just Sodom and Gomorrah that are destroyed. When God rains fire down from heaven, He overthrows the cities of the valley. The valley and the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. I was reading a commentary. I do have a couple of quotes that are put in here in a moment. But this was a location known for bitumen pits. I'm not sure what all that entails, if it's a certain amount of concrete or something used for pitch or mortar. But the idea that this commentary was speaking about was the fact that what could be mined out of the ground was flammable. Not sure if y'all could relate. What's mined out of the ground is flammable. And that the smoke that rises up from the ground, if you'll check your English translation, it's the smoke coming from the land when Abraham looks at it. It doesn't mean coming from that part of the world. It means from the land. The dirt's on fire. The entire area is destroyed. It's known, or it's been found archaeologically that there are 5 cities in the area. One of them Lot escapes to, Zoar. For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. I want to put to you that there was only one who was righteous in the city. And even he lingered. The stain of sin, the pollution of being around sin, of seeing sin, the way that I said it in trying to get out of being a paramedic was that I'd get up every morning and I'd go bathe in depravity of the world, because so many of the things that I was involved in trying to rescue people from was meanness, was spite, was hate, was just wrongness. Lot alone is considered righteous. His wife, whenever the fire begins to rain down, is overcome with, and I tried to figure out what to put here, because the Bible doesn't say she's overcome with something, but there's something about what's going on. When the event starts, there's something that makes her turn around and look back. And the angels told them specifically, you need to run for your lives. Do not look back. Do not stop. You have to go. And when the raining of the fire comes down, Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Quote number 1 from Growth of a Seed, which is essentially a commentary on the book of Genesis. It says, she may have looked back from longing for what was left behind. This would certainly make sense if she was a sodomite. Or this may indicate that she was not making a determined effort to escape. She lost her life for only one reason, because she had overtly ignored the directive of verse 17. Do not look back. She turned back toward Sodom and was overtaken by God's judgment. Although no longer in Sodom, she was still clearly of Sodom. If anyone thinks he is wise, is strong, is better than the temptation that's coming after them, is stronger than Satan, whom Christ died to defeat. If anyone thinks he's better than that, you need to take heed lest you fall. She's not in Sodom anymore, but she's still given to this. They escape to the city Zoar. They leave the city Zoar and they go to the mountains where the angels intended for them to go in the first place. And while hiding in a cave, Lot's daughters incestuously rape him in a peculiar turn of events. This is what the men of the city were going to do to him in the first place. The descendants of these incestuous offspring become two of the nations that frequently come into contact with the Israelites and would produce the worst carnal seduction in the history of Israel. That of Baal-Peor from Numbers 25. And the cruelest religious perversion, that of Molech, Leviticus 18:21. And if I'm not mistaken, that's where the children were passed through fire. That is child sacrifice. So much stemmed from a self-regarding choice and the persistence in it. And we'll look at that choice in a moment. At one point, I asked myself in this study, okay, would it have been better, considering the Ammonites and what the other group was, the Moabites and the Ammonites are going to come from this, would not it have been better? It's not my job to choose or to judge. If God had just went ahead and destroyed Lot too. One man would have died so that sin wouldn't happen for other people. His wife's not righteous, she turns around. His children aren't righteous. Nations come from this relationship that are a plague for God's people. Would it have been better? Would it have been better for God's people if he had just been destroyed too? God knows his people. God knows those who are his. At one point, Lot is so rich that the land cannot support his flocks and Abraham's flocks being in the same place. And at the end of his story, he's drunk, lying in a cave in the middle of nowhere, being raped by his daughters. His virgin daughters. Where do you think they learned that behavior from? Probably wasn't their righteous father. In our day, we may say, well, from the news, from the public school system, from the people that they interacted with, the things that he did or did not teach her from the words that God had given to him. He was so rich that he had to go one direction or the other, and in certain translations it says that he pitched his tent toward Sodom. The decision that he makes at this time is one that may give him a family, but it's going to take away everything from him. there are certain places that you can go that are not inherently sinful, where Christians just don't belong. There are relationships you can have that are not inherently sinful, that are not beneficial to your soul or your salvation. And how easy is it to turn around and look back at that sin? There's a proverb that speaks of alcoholism that says, do not look at the wine while it sparkles in the glass. It's going to make you want that more. The appeal to sin is strong, and we need not deceive ourselves about that. It's not weak of you as a Christian to say temptation is a problem for me. Guess what? It is for everyone. You are not alone in saying, there's some things that I need help with. Yeah, you're right. We all do. And maybe we should ask for help with those more. Sin looks good to us. It feels good to us. In certain situations, it smells good to us. But in no situation is it actually good for us. Jesus says you're not supposed to commit adultery. And I'll go further than that. If you even look on a woman with lustful intent, you've committed adultery in your heart already. The point being that you can lose the battle before you ever get into it. It's true. With every, and I think this scripture is coming up, or maybe we've already passed it. With every temptation, the Lord will offer a way of escape. And the way of escape may have been before you got to the place where you recognized, I'm in trouble. You lost the battle when you got in the back seat, not when you stopped saying no. You lost the battle when you got in the car, not when you pulled up to the liquor store. You lost the battle when you did not prepare love in your heart, not when you opened your mouth and said the actual words. We have to be prepared. We have to know what we are doing and be purposeful in what we are doing, in the Christians that we are. Man, Sodom looked good though. It looked like a prosperous place to be. And so once so rich comes to something so vile in Lot's life because it's associated with the sin that's around it. It's polluted by the sin of the world around it. Christians are supposed to be consecrated for a specific purpose. In Hebrews 10, starting in verse 26, if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. Anyone who has set aside the law of Moses dies without mercy on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much worse punishment do you think will be deserved by the one who has trampled underfoot the Son of God and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified and has outraged the Spirit of grace? We are supposed to be set apart for a reason, not just churchgoers, but purposefully living our lives in a way that magnifies our Creator, that glorifies God, that brings the mercy of Christ to others, as we discussed this morning. Or do we keep looking back? There's a certain point in your life where when you stop sinning, or when you decide to change your life, where you say, I used to have fun, but now I'm a Christian. It seems like a very innocent statement. And actually, it's a good step forward. But it's not the last step you need to take. Because if you're still considering that sin the fun in this life, not as strong as you think you are. You'll be appealed to by that fun, and you'll miss the fun without having fully focused on the glory that does await. There are 2 proverbs that I want to bring up. I think it's because one appeals to young men and one appeals to young women. The first one is like a gold ring and a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. Like a gold ring and a pig's snout. Ladies, if you're upset because I just called you a pig, I didn't. You're right. I just read your Bible. Like a gold ring and a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. If she's going to be a problem for you, it doesn't matter how pretty she is. Number 2, for young women. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. Be very careful with the men that you choose to associate with. If you thought it was bad being called a pig, I just called all the guys dogs. And when they show themselves to be, that's what you'll call them too. If someone is not helping you to be a better Christian, then they are harming your efforts to be one. We're going to Luke 17, if you want to go there in your Bible. In Luke 17, and there's a reason, a couple of verses down from where we're going to start, that we're going to Luke 17. Jesus is speaking to his disciples and says, there are days coming when you're going to wish I came back sooner. The words he says are, the days are coming when you will desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man. You will not see it. Luke 17:22. When will Jesus return? To deal with sin. That's right. That's what he's coming for, right? Not to preach again repentance, but to deal with sin. And there are times when, especially here lately, I've heard several people say it's got to be soon, right? It's got to be soon that he's coming back. Look at all, and then they reference whatever. And I'm not trying to belittle major sins in news headlines. But look at all the sin that there is to deal with. And Jesus continues from there and says, it was like that in the days of Noah. What do we know about the days of Noah? We're told in Genesis 6 that the thoughts of men in their hearts were on evil continually. When Jesus comes back, it'll be commonplace for that to be normal. It'll be commonplace for evil to be so normal in everyday society. He continues. Okay. He continues in 28 through 30 that like in the days of Lot, it was like this. Well, we just read that. What was normal and commonplace in the days of Lot? Homosexual rape. The admonition that is given in verse 32 for Christians is to remember Lot's wife. Why? Because we're probably not going to be the ones whose thoughts are on evil continually. We're probably not the ones who are going to be in the things that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah were involved in. But what we might be is somebody who is just about to escape. Almost out. Nearly clear. Maybe even dragged. Come on, dummy, get out of there. Almost out. And turns around and looks back. So the admonition is not one that we read of in so many other places. Keep your lives clean from the sin of this, that, or the other. A big long list. It's just so simply, remember Lot's wife. Remember what happens when you turn around and look back. When you say, whatever that was, I have a care for whatever that was. The passage kind of ends in verse 37 with a really weird, peculiar kind of sentence that it really doesn't seem like it belongs. Why is Jesus giving a zoological lesson? He said to them, where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Where the corpse is, the dead thing. What is death a result of? Sin. Where the result of sin is, the things that love that that's where they're going to be. Where the things of sin are, that's where the people that love sin are going to be. We have a city called Sin City. A very big church in the area. Why? Because people that love sin gather where they like to sin. Where death is, where the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. You might almost get away. Never look back. What's behind you? Nothing but death. That's what sin brings. That's what sin pollutes to all of those who are around. And so righteous Lot, who is thriving when he is with God's chosen people, when he looks back at when he looks at where the world thinks it's prosperous, he begins to lose everything. So much so that he cannot even keep his wife with him. How come his daughters did what they did? Where was their mama to stop them? She looked back. But don't forget, the reason the angels grabbed him up by the hand and pulled him out like a little kid being pulled out the back door, doing the one-arm dance. The reason that happened to happen in the first place is because even righteous Lot lingered where he shouldn't have been, because it wasn't good for him, it wasn't good for his family, and it destroyed it. God brought wrath on everything around it. Do not linger. That's actually going to be in the first verse of our invitation song tonight. I would encourage you to think about your actions far ahead of whenever you actually take your actions. Try to plan things out a little bit better. Try to count the cost of, the ramifications of, what's going to happen when I do this? When am I going to have to say no? When am I going to have to make a stand that looks different? How much is it going to cost me if I don't?